Last week, we brought you the story of a guard at Southern Regional Jail who claimed inmates were being denied water for days at a time in the quarantine section of the facility.
And that staffer wanted to share their complaint after the girlfriend of an inmate in SRJ claimed that he was forced to drink from the toilet after 3 days without water. And since that time, a spokesperson for the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security, Morgan Switzer, has come out with the following response. It says, in part, quote, "You recently published 2 stories regarding Southern Regional Jail that have not been properly researched, confirmed, or verified. More specifically, the story published today contained language that immediately calls into question the legitimacy of your source. Furthermore, there are no pending grievances, appeals of grievances, or any outstanding complaints that concern water or inmates having access to water at the Southern Regional Jail. The West Virginia Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation have every reason to believe that the allegations in these stories are false and the reporting is factually insufficient." End quote. Well, tonight, our Annie Moore has spoken to yet another staff member who worked at Southern Regional Jail earlier in the pandemic, who tonight is not only confirming those water issues in the quarantine section, but offering new insight on this issue. Our Annie brings us the latest from Beckley tonight.
That's right. The staff member we interviewed last week provided a copy of their badge as proof of employment. But we also spoke to a gentleman today. He says he was a guard there during the first half of the pandemic. He also provided proof of employment. Tonight, he's basically confirming the same issues we heard from the current staff member last week. Again, he did not want to be identified, but offered to sit down with Governor Jim Justice to discuss the issue. He also says it's the regional jail system's policy to only let inmates in quarantine out of their cell for 1 hour every 72-hour period. The staff member we spoke with explained that there were juice and water tanks in other sections of the facility, but not in the quarantine facility. Was that your experience?
When I worked there, we were supposed to, I made time to personally give them all juice, and they wanted us to give them, you know, they had the big orange tank, I think they're like 5.5 gallon or a little more than that, cooler tanks. That's what they gave us. And quite frankly, I was explained for time reasons to give them 1 cup of juice, which, you know, me personally, I like a lot of liquids with my meals, but I would try to at least give them 2 cups of juice based on what I had, because the kitchen would not make more. And 2 cups of juice is what I try to give out to every inmate in the cell. It would take a long time, but especially if they didn't have water, I personally try to give them extra juice if I had any left over, you know, to try to help them out. Because those cells would get hot in the summertime, and then in the wintertime, they would freeze, and then, you know, the only thing they were happy about was getting something to drink. And some of the guards would say, screw it, we ain't got time to go around cell by cell, because that's what you had to do to give out drinks and stuff like that. And it just really depends on the person working that cell block at the time.
So you saw cases where inmates were going days at a time without water?
Yes, I did. It's pretty rough. I would compare it to a concentration camp if I had to. And if Governor Justice wants to review this, I would happy to sit down with him in person if he would be interested in doing that.
And this is not the only feedback WVVA has received since our story on that first guard aired last Friday. We've received numerous calls, emails, and messages from former inmates, their family members, and former staff members at Southern Regional Jail. While some raised the water issue specifically, a lot of those concerns were about basic health and safety issues inside SRJ. Governor Jim Justice releasing the results of a state investigation into Southern Regional Jail.
The formal probe into claims of inmates drinking water from toilets, commodes overflowing, and other inmates having limited access to drinking water is complete. And the conclusion? there's no merit to the allegations.
It's important to note that the investigation by the state was essentially the Department of Homeland Security investigating itself.
WVVA has reported on the accusations by inmates, family members, current and former jail employees. They claimed inmates were being denied water.
And according to the report, 50 people were interviewed for the state's investigation. Inmates' telephone calls and financial records were also examined.
The report claims allegations of water deprivation and other mistreatment were false. The investigation also accuses a former employee who spoke to the media of being, quote, filled with so much bitterness, end quote, and also leaving SRJ for, quote, well-documented employment issues, end quote.
This probe also concluded, quote, family members were repeatedly lied to by inmates about clothing, food, water, mattresses, medical attention, living conditions, and even their shoes, end quote. It continued to claim inmates yelled at family and friends for not telling the story the way the inmate wanted the media to hear it.
And during a question and answer session before the release of the report, we asked Secretary Jeff Sandy why an outside agency was not called to investigate.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security by West Virginia Code is over these agencies, and the governor chose to have the cabinet secretary personally look into these allegations, because if I would have seen that one of the allegations was true, it would immediately been taken care of, and individuals would have been terminated, or there would have been employee issues that would have taken place.
WVVA's reporting on water issues at Southern Regional Jail was originally corroborated by 3 different sources.
That includes corrections officers working at that facility, and since that time, more than 20 different family members of the inmates and correctional officers themselves from SRJ have brought forth the claims of inmates being denied water, the severe plumbing issues, and inmates being forced to sleep on wet mats on the floor, among other concerns. And WVVA stands by its reporting.
Family of a Beckley man who died in Southern Regional Jail custody in early March will be laying their loved one to rest this Saturday. 37-year-old Quantez Burks died inside the jail a day after an arrest on wanton endangerment and obstruction charges. The regional jail system claims Burks died in a segregated section of the jail after becoming combative. His family says preliminary findings of a second autopsy raise new questions. Our Annie Moore reports.
An investigation is underway after the death of an inmate at Southern Regional Jail. According to the complaint, it all started on February 28th when Beckley police were called to the home of Quantez Burks. A neighbor, who's also reported to be Burks' tenant, claimed Burks had fired a gun in the home after telling the neighbor to get rid of the cats. But it's what happened after Burks was taken to Southern Regional Jail that remains shrouded in mystery.
Between 105, I would like to get Quantez Burks' bond. So, oh, I hate to tell you, he passed last night at 9 o'clock. I threw my phone and I start crying. Me and his mom, we crying. I stopped. I said, I talked to him 9 o'clock this morning. He not dead. He not dead. So when I threw my phone, I didn't know where I threw it. We looking for it, and then they called back 5 or 7 minutes, not too long after that, and said, oh, our mistake, and happened between 10 and 10:30.
A spokesperson for the jail says Burks had been combative on both days and had just been taken to a segregated section when he died. After his body was sent to the state medical examiner's office, his family says they ordered a second autopsy to be done in Pittsburgh. They say the preliminary findings showed blunt force trauma along with 2 broken wrists.
What if that was your brother? What if that was your fiance? What if that was your son? Anybody's. Y'all would want justice too. I want to know why.
Burks' mother says she'll stop at nothing to find out what happened to her son.
If it's the last thing I do in my lifetime, they will be held responsible. Don't ever be comfortable. Don't ever think it's going away, because it's not.
They want to know how a seemingly healthy man walked into Southern Regional Jail on February 28th and left in a body bag.
I have to go to a graveyard. I have to spend my next anniversary. I got to spend holidays, birthdays at a graveyard. But they don't.
Start tonight with continuing coverage of our investigation into Southern Regional Jail.
On Friday, we reported on the federal civil rights lawsuit filed on behalf of hundreds of inmates at SRJ.
And included in that suit were sworn affidavits from correctional officers who provided pictures and videos to back up claims related to the inhumane treatment of inmates.
And our Annie Moore broke this story. She did so last spring. She joins us now with the latest.
That's right. Since our report on Friday, we've obtained more documents from that suit, including an internal memo leaked by a correctional officer inside the jail. It includes the jail's upper management and suggests they knew about water issues in November. An internal email from November of 2021 was among the exhibits included in a federal civil rights lawsuit filed Thursday against West Virginia's regional jail system. At that time, it showed nearly 40 of the jail's 160 cells had no running water. It also lists broken windows.
Thank you, Melinda. In March, we broke the story of inmates going days without water at Southern Regional Jail. Through the Freedom of Information Act, court documents, and sources inside the jail, we uncovered more evidence related to inmate and corrections officers' safety at that jail. Those issues range from overcrowded conditions to broken windows and doors to critically low staffing levels. Now lawmakers are hoping to address some of these issues in West Virginia's upcoming legislative session. Our Annie Moore brings us the update from Beckley.
Delegate Brandon Steele has several bills aimed at addressing the crisis within the regional jail system. Since WVVA's first reports last spring, the Department of Justice has launched a formal investigation, and the governor's called in the National Guard. As of November, there were still more than 700 unfilled positions within the regional jail system.
We have militarized our prisons. That is dangerous.
According to Delegate Steele, one of the top priorities is boosting CO pay. A correctional officer can start here at Southern Regional Jail, drive 8 miles down the road to the federal prison, and make up to $10,000 more. In an effort to recruit quality COs, he would like to see the state offer correctional officers retirement benefits comparable to state law enforcement officers. But he says there's also $750 million in deferred maintenance to their facilities.
You know, our regional jail system came about in the mid-90s. Okay, it's getting on 30 years old now, and it's time for some real updates to be done to those facilities. On top of that is the working conditions of the correctional officers in there. They're some of the most lowest paid individuals in our system, yet they have such a vital role.
While the numbers put the crisis in perspective, so do the names. Miranda Smith lost her father, Alvis Shrewsbury, in September. She says he died of an upper GI bleed after waiting days for medical treatment.
You don't just set your child out or your animal out when they do things wrong, and it's abuse.
He was a son, husband, father, and grandfather.
My oldest writes him letters every day. I miss you, Papa, so much. I'll always love you, Papa. It breaks me.
A life cut short, and his family left asking why. Here for you in Beaver, I'm Annie Moore, WVVA News.